Welcome to another edition of the MMA Lockcast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week we're going over UFC Vegas 42, headlined by Max Holloway and Yair Rodriguez. Very, very much looking forward to this fight, as I think that Max Holloway is just a step or two away from another title shot, and not to mention we really want to see his encore, especially with the way that he was able to dispatch of Calvin Kattar earlier this year. Yair Rodriguez obviously been out for a little while now, and it's going to be refreshing to see him inside the cage. Great fight. Can't wait to break it down for you guys. But first, as we always do, let's go over the betting recap of the last event. It was UFC 268, obviously the big event that happened over there at MSG, and I had no lock of the night play. However, I felt like if I had a little bit more confidence, I probably would have had a lock of the night play, which was the parlay that I hit. And we probably would have cashed a lock of the night play. But a couple of things go a little wrong, and we end up with a slight losing night. Let's start off with the winners. Obviously, I had a parlay of Ian Gary and Ode Osborne. The Gary fight didn't really start off the greatest, but I knew that knockout was coming eventually. Luckily, he was able to get it near the ending of that first round and get Jordan Williams out of there. The Ode Osborne fight, I'll be honest, I thought Osborne would be able to get him out of there early, but Carlos Figueroa made it a very close fight, and I won't lie, I was sweating that ticket a little bit once we got to the decision there, but luckily Ode Osborne got his hand raised. That was a 2-unit parlay at plus 106 odds. That cashes for plus 2.12 units. Let's go to the other win that we had on the night, which was Alex Pereira inside the distance, 1 unit at plus 110. Thought that was a steal of a line, and after Mihalaitis expended his gas tank in that first round, trying to really clinch and grapple with Pereira. We saw Pereira obviously go out there and get that beautiful flying knee knockout. So good win for Pereira there. Then we had a couple L's. The under 2.5 in the Melsik Baghdasaryan and Bruno Souza fight. Bruno, I know he is a little bit elusive, but I was surprised at the lack of engagement that he had in that fight, which, really would have helped the finishing possibilities of Melsik. So I kind of understand why Bruno didn't engage as much, but I did think he'd engage enough that Melsik would be able to find that finish. So that's minus 1 unit on the under 2.5 in that fight. Also had a unit and a half on Frankie Edgar at plus 148 against Marlon Vera. That Frankie's done. Let's put it that way. I liked what I was getting pre-fight, and we did obviously had a lot of success in that first round. But after that, it got a lot harder for Frankie to get what he was doing. And then Vera, obviously, we saw how we dispatched of him at the ending of that third round. So good win for Vera there, but it's minus 1.5 units for us there. And then we had a 2-unit parlay, which started off great with Dustin Jacoby getting a decision victory win over John Allen on short notice. So let's give him some credit there. But, I thought I had that parlay in the bag. Because the second leg was Chandler and Gaethje doesn't go to decision. Almost got a finish in that second round, and there's absolute madness in that first round, and we still didn't get a finish. So I just had a feeling after that first round it finished, I'm like, ooh, this might not hit now, and it didn't end up hitting. So probably the most obvious play on the card. I'm sure a lot of people got burned on this as well with the fight doesn't go to decision, but that is the MMA game. Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker went 5 rounds a couple weeks ago. Bruno Capoloza and Ante Delia go 5 hard-fought rounds as well a couple weeks ago for PFL. Just got to minimize my exposure on those types of, this seems too good to be true kind of bet. But yeah, that's minus 2 units there. So all in all, minus 1.28 units on UFC 268. A couple bad bounces not really going our way, but it is what it is. We just get our shit back together, get back on the horse, and try to get some money back into our pockets this weekend. And that's exactly what I'm banking on doing for UFC Vegas 42. Now, shout out to the Patreon, patreon.com/MMALOTN. The link is in the description below. $5 a month. You guys get a great Discord community, which is easily the most valuable thing on the entire Patreon. And at $5 a month, solid entry fee, very easy. You don't even see it coming off your credit card bill on a month-to-month basis or your PayPal bill, depending on how you set up your payments. But not just that, you guys get early access to these breakdown videos you guys are about to see. A best bets and props article where I go through every single fight on the card and give you my best bet and best prop for every single fight, and not to mention we got a couple other great things in there. The pay-per-view parlay for the patrons. Every pay-per-view, I put 5% of my earnings from Patreon onto a parlay chosen by the patrons, and if it hits, I send the winnings to the winner We won this past weekend at UFC 268, and I'm sending over $160 to a random winner there who I drew the following day after a live draw stream that I did for them. So ton of great things to check out on the Patreon. Make sure you guys check it out. Again, link is in the description below. And then secondly, Coolbet, coolbet.com. Use promo code MMALOTN2. That's the promo code, or sorry, that's the number 2. Once again, MMALOTN2. They'll match your initial deposit up to $200. And yeah, it's a great betting website. You guys can parlay props. You guys can, you get great odds as well. I actually made my lock of the night play for this upcoming card on Coolbet, as well as my other play on this card on Coolbet, because sometimes they're a little bit slow with updating their odds, which is great for us, especially if we're a little bit behind on getting on tape study or anything like that, so we can take advantage of those odds as well. So make sure you guys check out Coolbet. And that was another kind of promo piece I wanted to do for Patreon, is when I release my bet, or when I place my bet, I release it on Patreon immediately, and then I don't drop it to the public until Friday, the day before the fights. So there could be tremendous line movement since the time that I placed the bet, but that's the benefit of being on the Patreon. You guys get the bet immediately so that we can get similar betting odds as well. Yeah, that's pretty much a wrap on the intro here. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and yeah, hope you guys enjoy the breakdowns. I'll see you guys on the flip side for the outro. Jung versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. We got -120 on the Korean fighter and +100 on the Fortis MMA product, Kennedy Nzechukwu. Very intriguing fight here. They were actually scheduled to fight back in October. The bout got rescheduled, not entirely sure why, but here we are this weekend with them going up against each other. I believe the first fight of the night, if I'm not mistaken. Jung obviously coming over a hard-fought victory over William Knight, where he's able to just impose as well with his size and his strength, really wear on William Knight and win that fight via decision. Where on the flip side, Kennedy Nzechukwu has had some crazy fights in his last 2 fights. Obviously, last time around, he was able to stop the takedowns of Danilo Marquez and really batter him on the feet. And if you guys have been following me long enough, you guys know I'm not very high on Marquez at all. And I've faded him even with Mike Rodriguez, which is probably going to be the lowest point of my MMA betting career, betting Mike Rodriguez at chalk. But I just really was not that high on Danilo Marquez at all. Luckily, Kennedy Nzechukwu brought a halt to that winning streak that Marquez was on. But unfortunately, I didn't have any money on Nzechukwu that night because, I thought he could potentially get taken down and grinded on and possibly submitted as well. The fight before that against Carlos Ulberg, that seemed like a setup fight for Ulberg to go out there and get Nzechukwu out of there, especially given the odds. We had -230 on Carlos Ulberg there. However, Kennedy's durability and heart really shone through in that fight, or shined through in that fight, and was able to deal with the early onslaught for Ulberg and then eventually get him out of there at second round. But both those guys were hella gassed in that fight. So, but they did put on a pretty tremendous pace, so I completely understand that as well. Here with Jung, though, I think that Jung is the slightly cleaner fighter. What does he have? He has 16 fights now, or 17 fights now to his name, compared to the 10 that from Kennedy Nzechukwu. Not to mention, the ringer that Jung has really been put through over his last several fights, even dating back to his regional scene, right? Kennedy Nzechukwu, probably the biggest win on his record is Darko Stosic, but he did a really good job in terms of keeping Stosic on the outside, and he had a huge height and reach advantage in that fight, if you guys remember. Not to mention all the point deductions from the Stosic side. It was a very, very messy fight to begin with. But here against Jung, I think that Jung could, overpower him in certain spots. I know Nzechukwu has a 1-inch height advantage as well as a 5-inch reach advantage, but I think that Jung is the slightly cleaner striker. I think that he knows how to utilize kind of the clinch and the grappling situations a little bit better than what Kennedy is doing. And again, 10 fights into his career, I still think that Kennedy has some improvements that he needs to make. Again, people are going to be like, how can you say that if he has wins over Ulberg and Marquez? Maybe not so much the Marquez side, but Ulberg, mainly a kickboxer, right? He was coming over with a lot of hype on his name, but he just couldn't get it done early, and he had to deal with the durability of Nzechukwu that night. The Marquez fight, again, Marquez not successful in terms of getting the fight to the ground and paid for it. But Jung is going to be a lot tougher of an out for Kennedy Nzechukwu. So I lean Jung. I could see a similar game plan to where he really leaned on William Knight. Maybe he tries to do the same thing here. Dragged Nzechukwu to the ground and maybe get some ground and pound going. But I do lean on the Jung side. Not the utmost confidence, but I do think he gets him out of there. I'm going to go second round TKO for Jung. Rafael Alves versus Mark Diakiese. We got minus 180 on Diakiese and plus 160 on Alves. Excuse me. Now, it seems like it's been a little while since we've seen Diakiese inside the cage. The last time we did see him inside the octagon was against Rafael Fiziev after he was already on a 2-fight winning streak, but I felt that was a bad stylistic matchup for him, right? Something that we really start to see from Diakiese during his 2-fight winning streak was his knack to go out there and really chop that lead leg of his opponents, use his calf kicks, render them defenseless, and then let his hands go after that. He did it successfully against Joe Duffy, did it successfully against Lando Venata, but unfortunately, he was going up against a very good Muay Thai practitioner in Rafael Alves, and Alves did a really good job in terms of shutting down those calf kicks and then letting his own offense go and really damaging Diakiese on the feet, eventually getting that decision victory. Not to mention, I think he landed a takedown in that fight as well, really showing the variety and the improvements that Fiziev was making in his game. Alves, on the other hand, made his UFC debut against Damir Ismagulov and gave him everything he could handle in that fight. Dropped him immediately in that first round and then had some good success in that third round, really pushing Ismagulov, a round that not a lot of people expected Alves to have much success in. If you go back and watch a lot of his fights, he has a game that's highly predicated on big explosions, big movements, big actions, which drains his gas tank. But luckily enough for him, he has that finishing capability to finish these guys within the first 2 rounds that the third round doesn't really come into play. So it was very surprising to see him have as much energy as he did in that third round against Damir that he did. Here against Diakiese, though, I think that we'll see Diakiese be defensively sound enough here to keep this fight on the feet, get his calf kicks going, slow down Alves, and then maybe get him out of there in that third round. But I do think that we'll see him have an all-around striking clinic here against Alves. Again, got to be very defensively sound. Alves, very explosive, very quick, can find that chin really quickly, and if Diakiese is slacking any second in this fight, he could absolutely be staring up at the lights with Alves with his hands up in victory. Again, would surprise me if that happens. I do like Diakiese here. I like his game. Still think he has enough left in the tank. There was big potential and a lot of high hopes for him earlier in his UFC career. Then he obviously went on a bit of a skid, losing to Dan Hooker and Nasrat Haqparast. But I do think he still has the ingredients to go out there and have a really good stint in the UFC. He's still only 28 years old, right? Kid's still making improvements. So very much looking forward to what he brings to the table here against Alves. Again, I think it's going to be a ton of calf kicks, a ton of movement, maybe some hesitancy in terms of letting his combinations go early, but I think the longer that the fight goes, it will be an advantage towards Diakiese, and he should be able to open up a little bit more the later that this fight goes. So I'm going Mark Diakiese, and I'm going to take him to win this fight via decision. Courtney Casey versus Liana Jojua. We got minus 240 on Courtney Casey and plus 200 the return on Liana Jojua. Now, I can't remember the last time Courtney Casey's been minus 200 against anybody, but that just lets you know what kind of opposition we're getting here with Liana Jojua, who did get TKO'd on the ground by Sarah Moras just 3 fights ago. Now, she hasn't been in the cage since, I believe, UFC 254, where she lost via cut stoppage to Miranda Maverick. And that just, that was pretty much how that fight was going to go, no matter how it went, or whether it got stopped by that cut or not. Miranda was just a much better fighter that night, and her Muay Thai was very much shining that night, which is why she was able to open up that beautiful cut via an elbow and then get that stoppage shortly thereafter. Liana Jojua, her sole win in the UFC comes after Diana Belbita has an absolute brain fart of a moment, taking her fight to the ground, whereas pretty much the only way that Jojua was going to win that fight, and then she quickly got submitted via an armbar right after that. Courtney Casey, she should have the slightly better striking area. She's going to have some range as well, a 5-inch reach advantage as well as a 3-inch height advantage. And I think she should, do a decent enough job in terms of putting some output there, landing a couple of takedowns if she needs to. But, I know Jojua has been training over there at Serra-Longo and really trying to diversify her training. I just don't know if she's going to be able to make those improvements to go out there and beat a girl like Courtney Casey. With that said, though, minus 240 on Courtney Casey is just absolute bonkers to me. There's no way I'm paying that money. I'm skipping this fight altogether, but I do think that Courtney Casey goes out there and wins a total MMA fight. Some striking, some grappling, some takedowns, I think Jojua's real shot to only win this fight is pulling off reversals on the ground if Casey does decide to get this fight to the ground, or something that's kind of been successful for a lot of people if they go out there and fight Courtney Casey is just take her down. It seems like there are instances where Casey almost accepts being on her back, and Jojua could absolutely do that, which is why I'm not laying minus 240 on Courtney Casey. However, I'd be surprised if Casey, ends up losing this fight. She is the better fighter here. I know she's 34 years old, 8-year, the elder of Liana Jojua, but I think it's still going to be enough for her to go out there and get this win. So I'm going Courtney Casey, and I'll take her to win this fight via decision. Sean Woodson versus Colin Anglin. We got minus 325 on Sean Woodson and plus 265 on Colin Anglin. Now, I'm intrigued by this fight because we got a solid grappler versus a solid striker. And, it comes down to who's going to be able to implement the game properly here. We've seen Sean Woodson, deal with a lot of grapplers and a lot of clinching and still come out on the winning side. But when you have such a small margin for error, if he doesn't, get out of those bad positions where, opponents are able to pin him up against the cage and get a ton of control time, he could be in some trouble. His lone loss inside the UFC obviously came against Julian Erosa, but Erosa took a different approach because he was able to match, the height and the reach and obviously the skill and the striking. And then he just kept pushing Sean Woodson and eventually broke him in that third round, finding that submission after he was able to get the takedown in that fight. There's so many times where, Sean Woodson seems to have trouble getting off the cage. But when he does and he's able to get back to range and get back to his, kickboxing range and style, he's able to put together some good output and some good activity, which sways the judges in his favor at certain points. But, he gives up so much control time. He gave up about 3.5 minutes of control time against Terrence McKinney. There's no official UFC stats on it, but if you just watch the fight, McKinney gets the takedowns, grinds out Woodson for about a round and a half, but McKinney did take that fight on short notice, started to gas in that second round, and we saw a beautiful flying knee from Sean Woodson, which secured him his contract inside the UFC. But then his UFC debut gives up about 4.5 minutes of control time to Bokniak, who not the greatest wrestler, more of a brawler than anything, but he was having success pinning Woodson up against the cage. However, Woodson, like I said, anytime he gets back to range, is able to put together some good combinations and output, which usually, the judges are able to favor. Zalal, I believe he got 6.5 minutes of control time against Woodson, wants the first round off of control time, pushing Woodson up against the cage and really controlling him there and making it difficult for Woodson to get back to his comfortable space inside the cage. But luckily for Woodson, he was able to do it in the second and third rounds, win those on the judges' scorecards, and then take home the decision victory there. So this is going to be the second fight now for Factory X against Sean Woodson. First they had Yusuf Zalal. Now they have Colin Anglin, who could potentially, make it a little bit closer. Again, I think these odds are a little bit out of whack here. If Anglin is able to push him up against the cage and get some control time, he could, sway the judges in his favor. And in my opinion, his striking is probably a little bit better than what Yusuf brought to the table. So I think he could remain competitive in the striking realm if he needs to. I think the line is way out of whack here. It's going to come down to will Anglin be able to push him up against the cage, maybe land a couple takedowns and get to work on the ground, or will Woodson be able to stay at range and get his boxing off? I will say this about Anglin. I know he got knocked out in his last fight against Melsik Baghdasaryan, which is probably, playing into the line here. I'd be surprised if Woodson actually gets a knockout as well. But Colin had some decent defense in that Baghdasaryan fight, but he slipped up for 1 second, didn't have the striking shield up high enough or hard enough, and we saw Melsik land a beautiful head kick, and it just absolutely shattered that shield of that hand, and it hit the temple of Colin, sends him to the ground, and obviously gets to finish in that fight. If Woodson's able to do something similar like that, I'd be surprised. We know Melsik, just as we saw last week, throws everything into his punches and his kicks and everything. I'd be surprised if Woodson is able to replicate something similar to that. So I'm actually going to go Anglin here. I'm leaning the Anglin side. I think he gets his clinching and grappling going. And even in the striking realm, I think he stays competitive enough so that he can eventually get to the clinch and the takedowns and then really sway the judges on his side. And again, second straight training camp now where Factory X is going to be going up against Woodson. Got to believe they took some stuff from that Zalal fight, are going to make the adjustments here with possibly a better fighter in Colin Anglin, and then he should be able to go out there and carry out those war orders, if that's what you want to call them, and get his game going. So I'm going to go Anglin by decision, which is plus 470, solid line there. But even on the money line at plus 265, I think that's a damn good spot. So I'm going Colin Anglin, and I'm going to take him to win this fight via decision. Cynthia Calvillo versus Andrea Lee. We got minus 130 on Calvillo and plus 110 on Andrea Lee. Now, I already have 2 units on Calvillo a little bit earlier in the week when I got her at minus 109. And I did expect the line to start to go towards Calvillo the longer the fight week went on, and that's exactly what it seems to be going on here. Now, it's interesting the amount of crazy wide lines and wonky lines that we're getting from Calvillo fights over the last several fights. The Katlyn Chookagian fight, she was a minus 230, minus 240 favorite in that fight. I didn't really understand those numbers, to be honest. I was happy to cash on Chookagian in that spot because I thought she had the perfect game plan and style to give a girl like Calvillo some troubles. Then she was an underdog to Poliana Botelho, which didn't make any sense. She was a minus 220 favorite against Carla Esparza. So some very weird and wonky lines, but I think there is another weird and wonky line this weekend with her, and I think that she should be an even bigger favorite here against Andrea Lee, to be honest. On the feet, obviously, Andrea Lee will have the striking advantage, but I don't think the margin is going to be as wide, as it was in the Chookagian fight. Chookagian had a great mixture of footwork, movement, and using her distance properly, whereas Andrea Lee, sometimes she overthrows, sometimes she commits to her strikes a little bit too much and gives up some takedowns, most notably like that Roxanne Modafferi fight. And why I bring up takedowns is I think that's the big path to victory here for Cynthia Calvillo. There's no way that she can trust herself, no matter how long she spent over there at Tiger Muay Thai before her fight against Katlyn Chookagian. No matter how much you say that she trained over there at Tiger Muay Thai, she's got to believe that she knows she's going to be behind in the striking realm if she goes out there and tries to outstrike Andrea Lee. So gotta believe that she's going to be going for some takedowns here. She's landed at least one takedown in 8 of her 10 fights in the UFC. And on the flip side for Andrea Lee, she's given up a takedown in every single one of her fights except her last fight against Antonina Shevchenko, where Shevchenko didn't even shoot for a takedown in that fight. So opportune takedowns from Cynthia Calvillo, and not to mention, I think that Calvillo is the best BJJ practitioner that Andrea Lee has faced in the UFC to this point. So if Roxanne Modafferi was having solid, success from that top control that she was able to get against Andrea Lee, gotta believe that Cynthia Calvillo will be able to do the same thing here. Again, I think that the margin, the discrepancy in skill is much larger on the ground in favor of Cynthia Calvillo than it is in the striking realm in favor of Andrea Lee. Again, I don't see Lee knocking her out. I think Calvillo will drag this fight to the ground, and I do think she has a solid shot to go out there and get a submission. If it doesn't come to fruition, her decision prop is decent enough at plus 150. Again, her money line is good enough as well at minus 120, minus 130, even minus 150 in my opinion, because I do think we'll see her go out there and land takedowns and just get the better of Andrea Lee there. I'm not the most impressed by Andrea Lee's takedown defense. And then on the ground, again, I think they're going to be levels apart here, with Calvillo being the much better grappler in this spot. So I like Calvillo a lot here. Official prediction is going to be decision, but I will be keeping my eye on that submission prop or that inside the distance prop as well for Calvillo, as I do think that she should be able to snatch up a neck at a certain point if Lee gives her that opening. So official prediction, Calvillo by decision. Thiago Moises versus Joel Alvarez. We got minus 250 on Moises and plus 210 the return on the Spaniard Joel Alvarez. Now Alvarez is on a 3-fight winning streak, finishing all 3 of his last opponents. Alexander Yakovlev gets him in a armbar. Joe Duffy submits him via guillotine, and then Danilo Belluardo, he pulls off a comeback in that fight. In the second round, he was able to reverse the position after Belluardo was pretty much riding him from the first round and the first half of the second round. But then it seemed like he tired himself out trying to control Alvarez, gives up the reversal, and then Alvarez goes to absolute town on him with some ground and pound and gets him out of there in that fight. That was obviously after his UFC debut against Damir Ismagulov, where he came in on short notice and just could do nothing against a guy in Damir who was the much better striker in there, maintained his distance well, used his pressure properly, and just really confused the game of Joel Alvarez and just outstruck him on the feet. So great game plan there from Damir Ismagulov, obviously as a minus 325 favorite, getting the job done there via decision. Joel Alvarez's game is pretty much predicated on him getting submissions and him getting the finish, because in most fights, he's always down. You know what I mean? He's always behind, and he's always able to kind of use the Homer Simpson approach where his guys almost just kind of, his opponents almost gas out, and then he's able to lock on a submission of some sort against them. His striking game is slowly coming together, but it's a lot of one and done, right? A lot of leg kicks, a lot of body kicks, a lot of big shots from the outside, but it almost seems like he just is just waiting for the grappling to start taking place so that he can start getting going with his jiu-jitsu game. The Yakovlev fight, the Duffy fight, like he just kept ripping leg kicks, ripping body kicks up until the point that his opponents took him down. And then from there, he was just, comfortable enough to eventually pull off a submission off of his back, which is exactly what he did in those fights. However, if he thinks that he's going to do that against a high-level black belt here like Thiago Moises, I'd be surprised if he thinks he's going to be able to go out there and submit that guy. I think Thiago Moises has the advantage on the feet, better combinations, getting better as well. Great leg kicks himself, good pacing. Solid wrestling as well. So I do think if he decides to take this fight to the ground, he can go out there and grind out Joel over 15 minutes if he chooses so. I saw an interview saying that he wants to go for a highlight reel knockout here. The longer that this fight's on the feet, the closer I think it could potentially be, especially with the height advantage that Joel will have on the feet. He's going to have, what is that, about a 5-inch height advantage, 4 to 5 inch height advantage, as well as a 6.5-inch reach advantage. However, Thiago Moises, not the biggest lightweight out there, so he's definitely faced bigger fighters in the past, but I don't think he'll really struggle here. I think we'll see him attack the leg kicks himself, maybe the calf kick, but I think landing takedowns and really dragging this fight to the ground will be his saving grace, because there's no way that Joel Alvarez is going to out-jiu-jitsu a guy like Thiago Moises, in my opinion. So, very high on Thiago Moises in the spot. I think he's worth the minus 250 shot, to be honest. And I have him in my lock of the night parlay with something later on in this card, because I believe that those are the two safest spots on this card. Great stylistic matchup from Thiago Moises. Gotta believe the guys over there at ATT are devising the perfect game plan to deal with a guy like Joel Alvarez. And then from there, he should be able to go out there and, in my opinion, I think he's going to grind out Joel. Let's just, let's try to stop a club and sub situation or even a Hail Mary knockout situation, get this fight to the ground, and then from there let your jiu-jitsu do the talking. So I like Thiago Moises here, and I'm going to go with him to win this fight via decision. Not the most confident on the method of victory here, but I do think that he gets it done regardless, whether it's decision or finish. For the sake of this prediction video, I'm going to go with decision. Song Yadong versus Julio Arce. We got minus 135 on Song Yadong and plus 115 the return on the Tiger Schulman trained Julio Arce. And as soon as this fight was announced, I had it circled in terms of from an entertainment standpoint, because I think this fight is going to be absolutely phenomenal. It should be a great fight and a potential fight of the night candidate as well. When the betting odds came out, I circled the Julio Arce side, as I believed he could be the value side here as the underdog, and I think people might be overlooking him. However, after running the tape, I believe that Song Yadong is a side here, and it's funny that the line is actually coming in, making it pretty, putting it in a bettable range for me. I might actually have a single shot here on the money line on Song Yadong. Now, I actually did bet against Song in his last fight against Casey Kenny, as I believe that Kenny would have success in terms of getting the fight into the grappling realm and then winning the scrambling and just getting the better positions and just, winning off of control time and being the more active fighter. However, Song did a very good job in terms of shutting that shit down and getting his striking off and really punishing Casey Kenny in that fight. Yadong earned a tremendous amount of respect from me in that fight. I was very high on Casey Kenny and didn't think he had the chops or didn't think he was actually going to lose to a guy like Yadong. But Yadong, like I said, stuffed the takedowns, was ahead of the game, and was obviously landing the much better strikes in the striking exchanges. Here against Julio Arce might try to play the matador role, right? Kind of similar to what Kyler Phillips was successful in doing against Song Yadong. However, Julio still gets hit, man. Like he still puts himself in danger. And even though he's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight, I think that we'll see Song move forward, land the big shots, really hurt Arce, and keep putting him on the back foot. I like Song a decent amount in this fight, to be honest. Again, it hurts me to say that, especially against a guy in Julio Arce who I've been pretty big on in the past. However, I do think that we'll see Yadong, again, move forward, land the bigger strikes, and I don't know if he'll finish Julio, but I do think that he'll pretty much have the judges in his favor based on how I see these rounds going down. So again, I like Song. If there is any type of BJJ or wrestling threat from Julio, we know that Song could obviously shut that down. And then in the striking range, it's going to be, possible volume and the finesse from the Arce side against the power and the brute strength that's going to be coming forward pretty much the entire time from the Song Yadong side. So I'm going Song, and I'll pick him to win this fight via decision. Miguel Baeza versus Chaos Williams. We got minus 140 on Baeza and plus 120 on Chaos Williams. Now, this is the fighter that I was waiting to get to fade a guy like Chaos Williams. However, there's just something in the back of my head in regards to Chaos Williams' knockout power and the ability for him to find that chin of Baeza and put him out here. That's really the only way I see Chaos winning this fight, right? He had a great performance against Matthew Semmelsberger where, I didn't give him enough credit in that fight, but he did a good job of putting together solid combinations and really just delivering a very solid 15 minutes against a guy like Matthew Semmelsberger, who I thought would have the advantage if this fight went 15 minutes, but Chaos showing improvements. However, he's going up against a much better striker here in Baeza, who is very keen on really attacking that calf kick, something that, usually renders his opponents immobile, and he's able to get his hands going after that. He wasn't able to successfully do that against Ponzinibbio in his last fight. We saw him win the first round, but after that, Pons was able to take over. But I don't think that Baeza will have as much to worry about here with Williams outside of that crazy power that he'll probably only carry for about a round or a round and a half. I like Baeza a lot in the spot. This could be one of those spots where if you play Baeza, you could hedge with Chaos by knockout, as that's probably his best way to win this fight. But I just like Baeza. I think if he's smart enough, maybe attack the calf kick a little bit here, then go for the takedown, then let your jiu-jitsu shine, because I don't think that Chaos has much at all to offer on the ground here against Baeza, who's a very, solid black belt. We obviously saw when he was able to submit Takashi Sato a couple fights ago, and I think that we could see it shine here once again against Chaos Williams. So I am going to go Baeza. I may play him. I'm still considering it. It's still Wednesday fight week, so I'm still mulling it over. But I do like Baeza here, and I think if he's smart, he goes out there, strikes long enough to be able to open up a takedown opportunity, take advantage of that takedown opportunity, and then go to work with your jiu-jitsu and really nullify that knockout power coming back from Chaos Williams. So I'm actually going to go Miguel Baeza, and I'll take him to win this fight by, let's go second round submission. Felicia Spencer versus Leah Letson. We got minus 310 on Felicia Spencer and plus 255 is the return on the returning Leah Letson. Now, we haven't seen Leah Letson since the Ultimate Fighter finale of the season that she was on, and we're talking about a 3-year layoff now where she was able to pick up a decision victory over Yulia Stoliarenko after she was bounced from the Ultimate Fighter tournament by losing to Macy Chiasson after some vicious knees in the clinch there. But going into this, I really thought that I was going to have Felicia Spencer as a solid parlay piece for this weekend. However, after running the tape, I'm just a little bit I'm a little bit more impressed with what I've been seeing from Leah Letson, considering that I had very low hopes for her. This is more so a spot where I felt like Felicia Spencer could go out there and get this fighter to the ground and really do her work and really shine where she shines, which is when she's able to get her opponents to the ground and do some work from on top. And I thought that Leah would be one of those girls that would give it up to her easily here. But just off of watching some of the tape, it seems like Letson has the slightly better striking, good aggressiveness, good output, good volume, good footwork decent enough footwork. And she does give up some takedowns, which is where the concern lies for me. But every time she gets taken down, it seems like she works right back to her feet pretty easily. But again, that's against lower level of competition compared to what she's going to be going up against here with Felicia Spencer, who is easily the best fighter she's faced in the UFC as an official fight. And the best BJJ / top control specialist she's going to be going up against. So that is a bit of a concern. Another interesting aspect is Letson obviously took a 3-year layoff here. It had to do with health issues, though. Apparently, her thyroid was off, or there were just a ton of things that were her mitochondria. Like, there were just so many things with her body, which made it really difficult for her to cut weight and have a full amount of energy. But after consulting with the specialist, she was able to sort that stuff out, and you can see just from her Instagram alone that she's in much better shape than we've ever seen her before. So you got to believe that there's been some good things going on with her nutrition, with her training. She's with a new training camp as well. Apparently there's a couple guys from the Rufus Sport team that left Rufus Sport and made their own gym now, and that's who she's training under. So she must be getting some good, time and focus from those coaches as well. But yeah, Letson, she's an interesting dog here. Again, my concern is just if she gets taken down, what it's going to look like, and if she'll have any success in terms of getting back to her feet. Because if Spencer gets her to the ground and she's as good as I think she is on the ground, I think Spencer could potentially get her out of there as well. TKO, submission, whatever it might be. But Letson, man, like she looks in great shape. She has the skills and the tools to beat a girl like Felicia Spencer, especially if she's able to keep this fight upright. One thing I noticed in the Norma Dumont fight for Felicia Spencer is, people are wondering why, there isn't even a statistical takedown attempt for Felicia Spencer in that fight. But I think that Norma Dumont did a great thing in that fight in terms of sniffing out when those takedowns were going to be coming and just shutting it down before she could even get anywhere near a takedown attempt. And what I mean by that is, like, just watch some of the exchanges that they have in that fight. You see kind of there's certain instances where Felicia bull rushes forward and she tries to clinch up with Norma, but Norma digs the underhooks right away, pivots off, and kind of just redirects Felicia Spencer into the cage, and then she turns her back and gets back to the center of the cage. And that's what really caused Felicia problems in that fight. And then when it was in the striking realm, the couple combinations and the output that Norma Dumont was throwing was more than enough for her to get that win in that fight. So that's where the concern lays for Felicia. If she's not able to get this fight to the ground, she could get outpointed on the feet. So again, I do think that Felicia is good enough to get Letson out of there if she does get this fight to the ground, but I'm not willing to pay minus 310 for it. So let's fuck around with some props, right? There's a couple props that I like for this, and I'm playing, and I wouldn't mind playing both sides, but I may have an official bet on the Leah Letson via decision, because Felicia, if anything, we've seen that she's very durable. She won 25 minutes with Amanda Nunes. She won 15 minutes with Cyborg Santos. And, they just couldn't get her out of there. I'd be surprised if Leah Letson is the one that gets her out of there. So Letson by decision plus 390, I like. Spencer inside the distance plus 230. That's a decent side as well if you like the Felicia Spencer side. Because, again, if she gets takedowns and she dominates on top, it's more than likely going to result in a finish. If not, that means that Letson is going to be getting back to her feet, and then the striking exchanges, I think, could lean to the Letson side just based on the output and the type of striking that I've been seeing from her. So the official prediction is going to be Felicia Spencer's second round submission, TKO or submission. I'll go with submission. However, my bet may actually be Letson by decision here, given the value that I believe we're getting and the unknowns, right? I'm picking Felicia to win. That would be my official prediction, but don't be surprised if I have a Letson ticket come fight night. Ben Rothwell versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. We got minus 150 on Big Ben Rothwell and plus 130 on Rogerio de Lima. Now, I'm seeing a lot of love for de Lima out there, and, it could be some recency bias, or it could also be, they believe that Ben Rothwell is really starting to slow down. But based on his last couple fights, and based on how Rogerio de Lima fights, I just don't think that underdog shot on de Lima is going to come through here. Now, obviously, there is the big worry about de Lima's leg kicks. He does throw devastating leg kicks. But outside of that, he's power, and then if fights are really not going his way, he seems to break almost, and then his opponents are able to finish him. I believe he's been to the third round a couple times, and he's been able to win decisions in his fights. However, they're just against opponents where he's able to get takedowns like Maurice Green, like Adam Wizardchek, and then from there he's able to just lay on top of them and just put together enough action and volume that the referee actually won't end up stopping the fight. He's going to struggle, in my opinion, to get Ben Rothwell down consistently and hold him down. Now, Tybura, obviously, he had some success in terms of taking down Ben Rothwell late in this fight, but that's after he put together a pretty good striking display, good output, good volume, and really start to not break Ben Rothwell, but really give him some fits. And then later in that fight, he was able to mix in a takedown, get Rothwell to the ground, and do some work from on top. I'm not expecting that from Rogerio de Lima here. I think he's going to have to deal with the pressure and the threat of the power of Ben Rothwell, and I think that alone will keep de Lima, slightly hesitant and then eventually gas and then eventually break. I don't mind Ben Rothwell on the money line here. I'm considering a bet on it, but even him inside the distance, I do think after de Lima's not able to get his game going, he will slow down. Ben Rothwell will catch up to him, and then he's going to be able to throw some big strikes and get de Lima out of there, whether it's a choke off for a desperation takedown or just an accumulative amount of strikes. And Ben Rothwell has some very underrated power as well. I think if he lands correctly on the chin of de Lima, especially if de Lima is starting to slow down, we're going to see a ton of trouble, and I think that we'll see Rothwell get his hand raised, again, at some point inside the distance. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Ben Rothwell. This is not no Maurice Green. I do like Ben Rothwell here, and even though he's at 40 years old, 4 years older than Rogerio de Lima, I still think he has enough in the tank to go out there and beat a guy like de Lima, who, in my opinion, again, he's grapple fuck or I don't want to call it grapple fuck or bust. He can grapple fuck you, but it's against guys that are willing to or will be really easy to take down, which historically hasn't been the easiest against a guy like Ben Rothwell. So I think de Lima could potentially struggle in that aspect. And then, unless he knocks out Ben Rothwell in the first round, that will be another kind of surprise to me. Ben Rothwell has had pretty damn good durability over the years, especially recently. So if de Lima's the one to knock him out, I'd be a little bit surprised. But I really like Ben Rothwell here. I think he'll be able to deal with the early onslaught, then start to come on later and get de Lima out of there probably in the second or third round. So I like Ben Rothwell, and I'm going to say second round. Let's go submission. I'm going to go second round submission after a desperation takedown attempt from Rogerio de Lima, puts him on his back, gives up his neck, and Ben Rothwell takes it on home with him. So once again, second round submission for Big Ben Rothwell. Time for the main event. We got Max Holloway finally coming back to the cage after his career best performance against Calvin Kattar back in January, and he's taking on Yair Rodriguez in a fight that a lot of people have been clamoring for over the last couple of years. Now we finally get it this weekend, and I can't wait for it to go down. Now, obviously, we got heavy chalk on the Max Holloway side at minus 600, and how could you not be considering the last couple fights that he's had? I know he lost those two Alexander Volkanovski fights, a very close fight, especially the second fight. And then he had a beautiful performance against Calvin Kattar, just absolutely demolishing him from bell to bell. I actually had a little bit of a bet on Calvin Kattar in that fight because I thought he was a technically better striker in that fight. But Max just achieved this godlike mode where it didn't matter at all. He was able to put the pace and pressure on Kattar, completely outnumber him with strikes, and just absolutely demolish him. You could have stopped that fight in rounds 4 or 5 at any point, and I think everybody would have been okay with it. But we did see Calvin Kattar take unnecessary damage in those rounds and see that 25-minute mark. Not a good look at all. But Max really did turn the jets on in that fight, and it was clear as day that he was really taking over that fight. Yair Rodriguez, on the flip side, is coming off a win over Jeremy Stephens in a fight where the tide was clearly turning in Jeremy Stephens' favor. It seemed like the pace and the forward movement and having to evade the big shots of Jeremy Stephens was really catching up to Yair Rodriguez. But luckily enough with the scoring, Yair was able to score those first 2 rounds, and then he was able to come away with a decision victory. Now input Max Holloway plus another 2 rounds. I think we're going to see an even worse beatdown, especially what we're seeing in that third round from Jeremy Stephens. I like Max a lot here. Obviously, he's a part of my lock of the night parlay. I have very low doubts that Yair Rodriguez is going to be able to spring the upset here. I think if you think he has any shot here, taking him round 1, taking him round 2, or even taking him by KO is the best way to go about it. Otherwise, I think he's going to be drowning in rounds 3, 4, and 5. Now, some people might bring up the rebuttal that, look, he knocked out Korean Zombie in the 5th round of their fight. But stylistically speaking, that was a completely different fight than what we're going to be getting from Max Holloway this weekend. Holloway is not going to let him breathe. Holloway is just going to continue to put the output and only get more and more and more as the fight goes on. And I don't think that a guy like Yair Rodriguez is going to be able to deal with that. So unless there's a Hail Mary knockout within the first 2 rounds from Yair, Max Holloway likely cruises in this fight and gets the finish in rounds 3, 4, or 5. Officially, I'm going to say round 4 for Max Holloway TKO. I think he just overwhelms Yair, breaks him, and then eventually gets him out of there via TKO. I love me some Max Holloway in this spot. Great stylistic matchup for him, and I think he blows through Yair Rodriguez after taking a round or two to figure out the distance and what kind of style that, well, not style, but just getting the timing and the feel and making his reads, and then from there he should be able to really turn it on and get Yair out of there. So I'm going to say round 4. Did I say round 5 or round 4? Officially, we'll go with round 4 TKO Max Holloway. And that's a wrap on the breakdowns. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe so we can get this whole YouTube algorithm thing on our side so we can get some more subscribers, continue to grow this community, and continue killing the game. Also, shout out to the guys on Patreon. Link is in the description below. $5 a month. Best bang for your buck on the market. Make sure you guys go check that out. And then obviously shout out to Coolbet. Coolbet.com. Use promo code MMALOTN2. That's the number 2. And they'll match your initial deposit up to $200. So shout out to Coolbet. And lastly, last thing I wanted to plug, I want to get the comment section a little bit more lit in here, right? Like usually we have about 30, 40 comments a video or something like that, but I want to get a little bit more, and I want to jump in the comment section and talk to you guys as well. So let's do this. Drop your lock of the night play in the comment section below, and I'll give you guys my quick thoughts on it. Obviously you guys are going to hear my thoughts throughout this podcast, or had heard my thoughts on this throughout the podcast. But again, I want to engage in some context. Is there something that you didn't agree with? You do agree with, whatever it may be? Let's get some Discord going on in the comment section below. So make sure you guys hit the comment section below with your lock of the night play, and I'll try to give you guys a rebuttal or some confirmation in terms of how I feel about it. All right. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Again, a ton of content coming your way throughout the week. Thursday, propping you up with John. Friday, Ultimate Wayne Show. Don't have a guest locked in yet, but I will drop that news as soon as I can. And then Friday, Fight Day live chat. I believe we have a 2 p.m. Eastern start time for the card, so I might do about maybe 11 a.m. or noon Eastern for the Fight Day live chat. But another early card. Love that as an East Coaster, and we can be done so that we can still go out there and do something on a Saturday night and be a freaking human being, folks. All right, good luck on your bets this weekend. I'll see you guys once again next week for UFC Vegas 43, headlined by Ketlin, Vieira, and Miesha Tate. At least it's a fight card, right? All right, good luck on your bets this weekend, fellas.